Another unboxing from Boox. Thank you so much to Boox for sending this out so that I can make this unboxing video and a full review after using it at work. To say that I'm excited about this one is a bit of an understatement, because I do really like using the large screen Eink tablets that are out there that I've used before. And I have really enjoyed using the Tab Ultra, which is the latest in the 10.3 range. And what they added to the Tab Ultra was a GPU, as well as a keyboard case. So this is a Tab X, which is branded slightly different to previous Boox devices, because this now says Boox make a difference rather than like a tablet, unlike any tablet. I think they thought that the GPU works so well in the Tab Ultra that you might as well put it in the Max Lumi 3 that they were planning. And so we got this, the Tab X. And I suppose the X is where it links back to that Max and Max Lumi branding. Here it is, let's have a look. They have gone for this new Boox branded. It took me a while to work out that this was B00X, this pattern. Boox. Always really nicely packaged. Always a nice unboxing experience. And now it seems certainly these flagship Boox tablets are coming with the Pen2 Pro. Brilliant. Although here's another example of where it just seems they've upgraded the Max Lumi, which didn't have the magnetic snap. They've given you a pen which does have the magnetic snap. Maybe just a little bit more thought could have gone into that. But who's complaining? You got the premium pen and you got the documentation. Interestingly, on this little tab, it says the 13.3 inch series. So that is an interesting distinction that they've been making. That's something I've not heard them discuss it as the 13.3 inch series before. And that is one thing you get used to with Boox. Their names aren't always logical. Wow. This is really, really nice. From the Lumi line, gone is the home button. The previous generation of Lumi, the Lumi 2, did get rid of the HDMI port on the back there, which was something that people didn't like. So you've got the USB-C port at the back, which can do OTG. I have accidentally touched the on button, which is on the top as I did that, which is great. So it's booting up now. So I think the 13.3 inch is always going to be where people who are inclined towards productivity are going to go. And the GPU does make a difference in terms of productivity apps. It does mean that the device, when it's enabled with the GPU, can handle third-party apps that little bit better. I like the fact that now you can just have a normal navigation bar, and this one is most like what I'm used to. You get your Eink Center, refresh, recent, home and back. It just means that I don't need to remember all the gestures from Boox when I'm going from one Android device to another. So I do hope that we'll see a 13.3 inch, maybe Tab X Ultra in the future, because that would really suit me. I think that this size, if it had its own keyboard case, would be what they are advertising this as being. This size would be an actual tablet PC. So I know that I'm already going to love this. I'm really excited to be testing this out for work for the next 2 weeks or more. If you're uninitiated on Boox and what they're all about, then the standout benefits are that you get full Google Play. So you get access to the full Google Play store. That way you can use any Android app at all. Also, however, there is great reading and note-taking apps as well, and I'll show off those as well. And so Boox is the one you want to go for if you know you want to do more on Eink. And one big reason why that is because they give you access to these different screen modes. If you're used to the Kindle or you've looked at Remarkable, you don't have any control over how the screen behaves. How it behaves is just how they've set it up to behave, and it works just fine with their own apps. But when you get into using third-party apps, then you need to have these options. And the GPU allows these 4 different options. The HD mode, where you get this beautiful crisp screen, the balanced mode, where you can see a slight loss in detail, some slight ghosting, and ghosting is that Eink sometimes leaves a little imprint of what it had previously showed when it just refreshes part of a screen. Or fast mode, which now will go to much higher frames per second, but you will lose some detail and you will get some more ghosting, but that's better for things like browsing a web page. And now they've added the ultra fast modes with these GPUs, and that actually, you do get more detail loss, but really you can watch videos on this thing. There's also DPI setting, and what the DPI setting does is it changes the sort of effective DPI of the app and what it's showing. So it can essentially change the scaling of the app. I'm going to leave that initially on at 207, and 207 is the native DPI of the screen. So that will just allow things to scale to this size, because as you can perhaps see, the little app icons are really big on the screen because it is a interface that they've designed for a smaller tablet. And I think that's one question that Voya raised, really, was that they should be redesigning the user interface for the larger screen. And you also get dark color, so contrast essentially, enhancement, light color enhancement to allow you to optimize the screen for third-party apps. The default apps, the first party, the books apps, always run brilliantly on Eink. But for third-party apps, it's brilliant to have these customizations. The other thing about books that you should know is that they aren't always easy to use because they can do so much more. They're very complex devices. And because they're quite committed really to giving you updates as quickly as they can and add features that competitors have or that people suggest that they have, and there is a really good way to give that quick feedback through the settings. And they actually work on those suggestions really quite quickly, so they add features very quickly. But it does mean that the menus are quite complex, and that can make it difficult to just do some slightly simple things. It's the type of devices that you should look at and go for if you're used to working with technology and you're used to understanding complex tech. And if you're happy on Android, you maybe use an Android phone, you'll be happy on Boox tablets as well. So it's talking about individual app optimization, and the nice thing is once you've set an app optimization, it will remember your preferences for that app optimization. So I'll go ahead and get this all set up and signed in and everything like that, but just really quickly, I'll just put it side by side with the Max Lumi. I think it is ever so slightly thinner. I'm sure I've read this somewhere. Yeah, you can perhaps just see the actual container seems to be the same thickness, but the Max Lumi, actually the screen stands a good millimeter sort of proud of that. And that's meant that the whole Boox Tab X is a tiny bit thinner than the Max Lumi, which is nice. The processors are all upgraded. Everything seems to be quite upgraded about the Max Lumi. I'm going to take off this screen protector, because otherwise it wouldn't be a fair comparison with the Max Lumi. But there you are, you can see side by side they're essentially exactly the same size. They are the same size. The home button's gone. They've added this little bit of Boox branding down the bottom there, which is welcome. It just makes it a tiny bit more stylish, I suppose. You can see the home screen is now totally different. So the older Boox devices have this home screen where you've just got apps and library up the side here, and now the home screen is what I would consider to be a normal Android home screen. But let's just go into the notepad for both. A slight different color to the two. Let's add any notepad in here. Yeah, it's a textured kind of screen, but it's not massively a paper-like screen. And I'm not seeing much difference there in terms of the screen feel. It's a yeah, I think you can see. Probably won't see it much on this video because it's only 25 frames per second, but you can see a tiny bit less lag here on the Tab X. I'm not sure it's really as good as the Tab Ultra in terms of its screen speed. Getting a slight bit of, yeah, it does on both. It's always a bit funny if you get a funny end of the line like this. The Max Lumi, I certainly wouldn't kick it out of bed. It certainly is still a fantastic device as well. But I have absolutely loved using the Max Lumi. And I'm sure I'm going to love using the Tab X. But I also loved using the Tab Ultra. And one thing that I've loved using on the Tab Ultra is the keyboard case. Am I going to miss that? Let's just see if there's a notable difference in speed between the Tab Ultra and the Tab X. Not that I'm going to notice with the naked eye or with the 25 frames per second video, I think. You can maybe just see that it's sort of in this, it's updating in a sort of more like an area as that comes across there. If I show you a still from each, you might just see something there. And the keyboard case made it very natural to use this around things like email and other productivity tasks. So I'm interested to know whether I'm still going to be keen to use the Tab X for those tasks, given that if I wanted to do that on a keyboard, I'd have to pair a Bluetooth keyboard. I don't think I'm going to do that every time I want to type something. I'm just going to rely on the laptop probably. And another interesting thing is that Eink is always renowned for amazing battery life, and that's certainly impacted by the GPU. The question is, how much is it impacted by the GPU? And it'll also be interesting to know how much use I get out of the split screen, which is amazing when you get to this size of device, because there is absolutely no doubt this size of device is geared towards productivity. And when you have essentially an A4 screen, which you can have two half screens, two A5 screens essentially next to each other, then there's no doubt that this is going to be beneficial for productivity tasks. So I'll get it set up and I'll let you know my first thoughts after just a few days, and I'll be back with a full, after 2 weeks using it at work, full review of this device. So I've been using the Tab X for a few days now, and I've had the chance to do my planning for the next fortnight on it, and I've had the chance to go ahead and do a drawing on it as well, and I can tell you that I'm quite impressed so far, and I'm going to go ahead and give you my sort of opinions on it. This is one thing I did find whilst I was drawing, is that when you've got a lot of brush strokes, it does this, I'm rendering a lot at the minute, you know, please wait. And I would really love to see books come with a dedicated drawing app, such that we could really get the best out of drawing on this amazing tablet. Because drawing at this large size on this wonderful screen with the excellent Boox brush tools is fantastic, but clearly this is a notes app which is optimized for taking notes rather than for drawing, and I'd love to see Boox actually come with their own dedicated drawing app, because they do a great job of that. But I'm going to talk more about Eink for drawing in other videos, and today I'm just going to talk through my first thoughts after using it for a little while. So the first question is, this is only 207 dpi, and are you missing out? And I think the answer is no, because you're actually comfortably reading this from a further distance away from the screen, and so it's not really so noticeable. 207 dpi is good enough to generally at this sort of distance be undiscernible to the naked eye. It's fine. The one thing I did notice when I was setting it up, and I've just set up a different Android tablet that asked me if I wanted to pull down all of my details from Google, and you know, essentially if you buy a new phone, what happens with Android is it says, do you want to sync all of your contacts, all of your apps and everything like that? And actually, I think there is a middle ground really that Boox could actually look at doing, letting you sync a little bit more to a Boox tablet to make it more like, wow, I'm straight at home, I've got all of my apps with all of my data. And that's an interesting avenue for Boox to think about exploring. Whether or not they'd have to release their source code to allow Google to let them do that, I don't know. An interesting point is, when I first booted this up, I could actually feel where the GPU is. It is actually a little bit warmer just here, and I've got some shots of this on my infrared camera which actually show that this area does get warmer, and I want to compare that really to the Boox Max Lumi and see if that is clearly noticeable, because the GPU we think is making this line of tablets, the Tab line of tablets, actually have a worse battery life than the ordinary Boox line of tablets. That could be where the GPU is, it could be where the CPU is, but certainly this area gets actually noticeably warmer. Not like hot, noticeably warmer, and that means that it's using a lot of energy. And it's actually noticeably warmer just now. So I did think maybe it was just as I was downloading new apps from the App Store and it was really running that CPU quite high. But actually, even now, just having booted up and doing this bit, it's already doing that. The interesting point that Voya made about the scaling. Now actually, these icons look too big on this screen, because these icons and this whole layout was made for the Tab Ultra. We don't need them this big on this huge screen. We need them to be scaled to actually make more use of this extra screen real estate. Voya also pointed out that, look, the text here is getting cut off. And I do think that they should look at doing an update to allow me to have double the number of apps actually shown on this home screen, please. More details, and certainly not having this point with some text cut off. For instance, there was just a space on the home page where the camera app had been on the Tab Ultra. So they not obviously put in a camera app or a scanning app, and they just left the space there. But then a lot of the time I'm going to use this in split screen, so they also need to get the scaling right in split screen mode, which then it does look fine. So when you're in split screen mode, now these apps do look the right size, and actually so does this text over here as well. And this, if you're going to buy a big device like this, you're going to use it a lot on split screen. This is where I'm going to spend a lot of my time. Handwriting recognition is absolutely on point now across the device. So wherever you are on the device, the handwriting recognition is actually excellent. I just didn't want to show that. Oh, that is absolutely weird. So what's going on there? Maybe that's another point about this sort of scaling up to this larger size. Not a deal breaker in the slightest bit. Lots of useful settings as well. One thing about handwriting recognition is it's useful for you to learn how it likes to see characters. So the way I do my X's, these curly X's, sort of math script X's, then it doesn't really like that input. And of course, if you don't like the Boox keyboard, you can download the Google Gboard or any input method of your choice from Android. So there's so much of an ability to customize the input to what you want. I used to recommend that's the first thing you should install on a Boox tablet, but actually they've improved the Boox keyboard to the point where I actually use the Boox keyboard now. A question about this sort of size of device is it going to be too heavy? Surprisingly, no, not really. You know, it is obviously heavier than a smaller tablet, but it isn't too heavy by some distance. It's a nice sort of weight for its size. The interesting thing, I didn't know this before, but actually lots of things you can actually hover over with the pen. So you can see you can sort of half press things, and sometimes that brings up menus. So for instance, in Google Drive, where I've maybe got something with longer titles, just by hovering over the pen, it will actually bring you that kind of half press menu, which is a useful thing to know that this technology can actually do. I don't know if other Eink tablets do that. Certainly something that I haven't used before on others. So yes, I did some drawing on it. I've shown that at the start here as well. I'll play a little bit of a time lapse, why not? It is really, really good for drawing. I was a bit surprised when I got to the end of its kind of buffer and it did this large rendering and there was a bit of a delay there, but that's absolutely fine. It would be better for drawing if they could iron that out, because, well, it's not something you see on an iPad or other Android tablet. It's doing that in a dedicated drawing app, so that's what I want to see next. One absolute joy, and perhaps you're considering this or something like a Kindle, will be reading a Kindle book or reading any book, of course, but with side-by-side mode and notebook. You can read a Kindle book on this side and you can take notes on a full A5 size note paper on this side. I mean, that is absolutely splendid. Depending on the type of reading that you want to do, this might blow the Kindle Scribe out of the water as an option. So let me know what demos you want. I'm going to do a Tab X versus Lumi side-by-side video coming soon, and I'm going to do a Tab X versus Tab Ultra side by side. Let me know what demos you want to see on this and what comparisons you want to see me make. I'm also interested in doing this drawing in London, you know, maybe going to an art gallery and actually working with the tablets in the art galleries and doing some nice drawings and seeing what they can really do. I just wanted to point out something about the pencil now having tilt. That's great. I'm absolutely made up that it has tilt, but it doesn't have much of a range of tone with pressure. A little bit, but not a great deal. It's not as easy to arrange the tone for the very, very light tones, at least, as it is on the Remarkable or the Kindle Scribe. However, unlike the Remarkable and the Kindle Scribe, you do have in the pencil tool different shades of grey. So for the very light tones, you can use the lighter grey, and that can give you a nice drawing effect as well, but it doesn't sort of put down less graphite, it's just a lighter toned graphite. So it can still work really, really well, but it doesn't have the tilt, doesn't have the sophistication of the Kindle Scribe tool or the Remarkable pencil tool either. It's good though. My very first thoughts on this, I'm absolutely loving being back to planning and working at this full size on Eink. And I am loving drawing at this full size as well. I'm really pleased with the case. Again, they're going for these nice green tones, this nice professional looking notebook here. I'm excited to be once again working on a full A4 sized Eink tablet. It's fantastic. If you've never tried that out, I think, yes, it costs a lot, it's worth it. I'm gonna miss the keyboard case. I do wish they'd brought a keyboard case out with this one. I'm hopeful that'll be in a future A4 tablet from Boox, but I'll be relying on the handwriting input and the voice recognition, which are excellent on Boox as well. So stay tuned for the full review once I have used this for those 2 weeks, and I'll be back with my really thought out thoughts on this device.